This week's episode of our show has been sponsored by Fables, the new episodic monthly subscription from Ghostfire Gaming.
Fables is an episodic monthly release that's an adventure that includes all of the maps, tokens, and everything you need to run it at your table.
Each Fable comprises of 6 linked episodes released over 6 months. Put them all together and you have a complete campaign.
Set in the worlds of Grimhollow, the first campaign, known as the Citadel of the Unseen Sun, takes place in the Estoian Empire, a realm of unending night, where vampires reign supreme and people live in fear of the unending darkness.
In this first Fable, it's up to your characters to bring the light back into this dark world. And best of all, the final dungeon of this 6-part series might have been written by a certain pair of dudes who might be experts in dungeons.
The first episode is coming in January of 2022, but if you sign up now, you'll get a discounted rate on your subscription. So follow the links below to get in your pre-orders now.
And now, on to this week's episode. Greetings! My name is Monty Martin.
And I'm Kelly McLaughlin.
And we are the Dungeon Dudes. Welcome to our channel where we cover everything D&D, including advice for players and guides for dungeon masters.
We upload new videos on Tuesdays and Thursdays, so please subscribe to our channel so that you never miss an episode.
Today we are taking our first look review at Strixhaven, A Curriculum of Chaos. This book literally came in the mail minutes before we started filming. We have been looking at it first in D&D Beyond, and we're so glad that we actually got our physical copy for this review.
Monty and I have been reading through this for the past 24 hours, soaking in as much as we can, reading through some of the new options, the new adventures, and we're going to talk about our initial thoughts on what's in this book.
Now, for those who have been following the D&D news, Strixhaven follows a recent tradition in D&D 5e of Dungeons & Dragons and Magic the Gathering crossovers. This is because both Magic the Gathering and Dungeons & Dragons are both published by Wizards of the Coast, and so there's a whole bunch of art assets and world building and interesting settings that are created by the Magic the Gathering team for the card game that really Magic the Gathering players I don't think care too much about. Like, not a lot. When I played Magic, it wasn't really about the lore. It was about which cards were the most efficient at winning tournaments.
Yeah, I've never actually paid any attention to the lore, but some people do.
But actually, the worlds of Magic the Gathering are pretty cool, and many of them are very well developed and have lots of great artwork, lore, and design behind them because Wizards of the Coast has some amazing artists working on that card art, and so it really brings these worlds to life. So we've been seeing more and more crossovers. There actually was a Dungeons & Dragons Magic the Gathering set that was done, so it went the other way as well. And now we have Strixhaven. So this is the third book in kind of the Magic the Gathering crossover series, the first one being Ravnica, and the second one being Theros.
What's really interesting about Strixhaven specifically, Monty and I haven't necessarily been keeping up on Magic the Gathering lore recently, but it seems like Strixhaven was only introduced earlier this year. In, I think, about April it came out?
Yeah, the Magic set.
Yeah, so with it being a relatively new Magic set, it stands to reason that they were working on both the Magic the Gathering Strixhaven set and this book in kind of conjoined with each other. So it's almost like it's a release for both that was worked on at the same time. So if you're wondering what Strixhaven is the greatest mage school in all of the multiverse. Brought into the worlds of D&D, this gives you options to run a campaign that brings your wizarding school fantasy to life. This has a lot of aspects of what it might feel like to live your college or university lifestyle, but if you had magic powers and were in a magic world. And there's a lot of fun to be had within that.
The College of Strixhaven is divided into 5 separate schools that are each based on what are called the enemy color pairs in Magic the Gathering. And this is actually something that's not told to you in the book. There's 5 colors of magic that technically they're in this wheel that creates oppositions, kind of like an alignment chart. And in Magic the Gathering, there's lots of cool play with figuring out like what happens if 2 colors of magic work together, especially when those colors of magic are on the opposite sides of the spectrum of the color wheel. So you have Silverquill, which is the black and white. You have Prismari, which is the red and blue.
My favorite would be Witherbloom, which is black and green. Then we have Lorehold, which is red and white, and Quandrix, which is green and blue. So one thing that you're going to notice if you're picking this book up is that it really doesn't try to hide all of its influences about being a campaign setting that is based on a magical school. Anybody out there who's a fan of Harry Potter is going to see parallels right away. It's not shy about those parallels. It really just takes the mythos of Harry Potter, takes out the British boarding school, and puts in American university lifestyle instead. For those who have attended any colleges or universities out there, you're going to notice a lot of parallels to what it's like to actually live campus life. And I found that really fun that a lot of those parallels exist in here. So it really is bringing that sort of Americanized version of Harry Potter world to life in a cool way.
In case you missed it, a Strix is a type of owl, so this is very much a setting that wears its influences right on its sleeve. And of course, Harry Potter isn't the only magical school that has existed in fantasy, and so I did find, in even glancing through it, there's a lot of references to things like Sabrina the Teenage Witch, as well as little touches and pieces of all those wonderful magical schools. Because really, Harry Potter doesn't have the market cornered on the magical school genre. It's kind of one of the oldest genres going out there, and I think it really exemplifies a lot of the tropes that we see across the genre in this book. Although the Harry Potter is strong with this one.
They even have a stadium where the wizards get together to play something called Mage Tower, which, other than not having brooms, feels like it's the American football version of Quidditch.
Yeah, if Quidditch is cricket, then Mage Tower is definitely the American football. Now, before we go any further, a bit of a disclaimer. This book on D&D Beyond has been categorized as a source book, put in the same category as the Ravnica and Theros books, as well as Xanathar's Guide to Everything and Tash's Cauldron of Everything. It has also been marketed as a source book, but it's not. This is an adventure for characters level 1 to 10. And so if you were expecting it to be a source book with lots of player options or a campaign setting with lots of tools for you to build your own world, well, there are some of those in here, but probably not as much as you were expecting. This is an adventure, first and foremost. And so for those of you that have a playgroup that loves Harry Potter, that is excited about those ideas, you're going to have a great campaign to run for your players. But if you were expecting something that was in line of Xanathar's Guide to Everything or Tash's Cauldron, or even something that was similar to the previous Ravnica and Theros books, you might be a little disappointed by this one.
Even the player options like new feats, spells, and magic items are all tailored very much in line with the campaign setting. And although there are a lot of tools here that sort of explore what campus life is like, with new rule sets for how to dictate things like studying or extracurricular activities at the school, the meat of this book is an adventure that takes you through 4 years of school and 10 levels of play with different adventures that you go on encompassing each year at the school.
Well, Callie and I want to get into more detail about what we think about what's in this book. The bottom line is, if you're looking for player options, this book is not worth it. There are 5 new spells in here and a new player race that you could use in other games, and some monsters that you could potentially use in other games. I don't think if you're buying this book for those alone, it's not worth it. You should just get those on D&D Beyond through the compendium. If you want to run an adventure set in a magical school and you are looking for a great source book to how to do that, you should buy this book.
So with that in mind, let's talk about some of the player options. One thing that this book did introduce is the Owlin race. With the Owlin, we follow in kind of the tradition set by the Tash's Cauldron of Everything, with the ability scores not being locked to anything specific here. But very interesting with the Owlin, you can increase one ability score by 2 and another one by 1, or you can increase 3 ability scores by 1. There's some really interesting play there. The main features of the Owlin are that you gain dark vision and a flying speed.
You also gain proficiency in the stealth skill as well. So basically, quite similar to the Aarakocra, the flying speed is slower at 30 feet instead of 50 feet. You get the dark vision, you get the skill proficiency in stealth, but you don't get the claw attack that the Aarakocra has. Overall, I think that, it's a very cool thematic player option, and it fits the setting very well because, of course, as we said, it's called Strixhaven, so there better be owls.
This book also introduces 5 new character backgrounds. Now, what I think is important to note about these backgrounds is they definitely are a substantial jump in power over a lot of the other backgrounds, mainly because each background gives you an expanded spell list and a feat. So if you are thinking of using these backgrounds, you're going to find with a lot of options in this book, the backgrounds really advertise using them for this setting. If you open them up to availability to your players and somebody picks being a criminal and somebody else picks a background that's going to give them an expanded spell list and a feat, well, somebody's really winning there.
Yeah, my recommendation would be to not use these backgrounds unless you are actually playing a bona fide Strixhaven campaign, because otherwise they're just not fair. All of them give extra spells known to your class spell list from 1st to 5th level. There are some really big outliers here on these, so use them with caution. The feat that they grant you is actually fixed. It's the Strixhaven Initiate feat. This Strixhaven Initiate feat is very similar to Magic Initiate in that it gives you your choice of any 2 from 3 different cantrips associated with your respective Strixhaven school, as well as a 1st level spell from a certain class list. So in general, what these backgrounds do is make sure that every player character that is in a Strixhaven campaign is some kind of spellcaster, whether or not you play as a barbarian or a fighter or a monk or a wizard or an artificer or anything else. It means that every character has that magical feel behind them. And so it's fine in the context of this campaign where all the player characters are all taking these backgrounds. Otherwise, I would not use this in a non-Strixhaven game.
And that seems to be a running theme in this book, is that a lot of this advertises playing in an extremely high magic setting. Now, I will say that the book does state that any player character has a place at Strixhaven. If you want to be a champion fighter by choosing one of these backgrounds and gaining the feat, you are a champion fighter who has some limited spellcasting and therefore has a place at Strixhaven. So this is really a tool to bring the character that your players want to play to life in a Strixhaven campaign.
Now, the other feat that you can get from this book is Strixhaven Mascot, which actually requires your character to be 4th level and have the Strixhaven Initiate feat. So some of the highest prerequisites we've ever seen in a feat. This lets you cast Find Familiar, but you get to summon one of the new Strixhaven mascots that are provided in this book, and it also gives you the ability to let that familiar attack or use its special abilities. It's a pretty decent feat, but again, I think it's one that's very specific to this campaign.
This book also introduces 5 new spells. All of them are available to wizards. Some of them are available for artificers, clerics, and sorcerers, and one is available for warlocks. But a few of the spellcasting classes kind of get left out here.
Yeah, well, bards and druids do get a couple of these. None of them are for paladins and rangers. Sorry, guys.
Our 2 favorite spells out of these 5 new spells is Silvery Barbs and Vortex Warp. We're actually going to talk more about these spells in a different video because we actually have a lot to say about them. But those 2 are the standout options. And that's about it for player options for this book. With the spells and the Owlin race, these 2 are things that I could see used in any game. But when it comes to the backgrounds and feats, even the magic items, which are books that you can get from your various school that you're attending that grant you a few extra bonuses based on that school.
Hey, don't count out the bottle of endless coffee.
There is a bottle
which I would like in real life.
There are some common magic items like the bottle of endless coffee that are really fun to give to a starving student who is living off of their caffeine addiction. But beyond that, a lot of this is really advertising a Strixhaven campaign. You don't want to be giving these magic items aren't really going to be useful outside of a Strixhaven campaign. Same with the backgrounds and the feats. They're really baked into the campaign that's presented here.
Of course, because we are talking about the campaign, A big spoiler warning that if you are possibly considering playing in this campaign or want to avoid spoilers, our review will talk on a few things. However, I do want to acknowledge one really awkward thing about the overall campaign. If you have read the Harry Potter books or watched the movie, this campaign will be completely predictable to you. It's basically playing the greatest hits of Harry Potter. So for me, in talking about spoilers for this book, the awkward thing about it is that the people who are going to most enjoy it are also going to know exactly what's going to happen. Now, it's been a while since Kelly and I have done a review of one of the 5th edition campaigns on this channel. And part of the reason for that is that we personally feel you can't really do an honest review of a campaign that you haven't played in or run. So take everything we say here with a grain of salt, because honestly, I have seen Dungeon Masters take pretty middling campaign material and run an amazing campaign with that, and vice versa. So for me personally, the campaign material is not as important as how much that resonates with the DM that runs it. And I think that if you are a DM that loves the magical school genre, that loves Harry Potter, that has a group that loves it, this campaign is probably going to be magic.
Yeah, and I actually think that between Monty and myself, we're actually going to have differing opinions here, because I personally love magic schools. I love the idea of it. I grew up with Harry Potter, and I have a group that as soon as they heard about this book, they're already chatting about it. I'm in the middle of another campaign, and then we're running Drakkenheim after that, but they're like, can we run Strixhaven after Drakkenheim? And it sounds like that's what they want to do. So if you have a group that is excited by a magic school with obviously some mischievous magic going on, a mystery that needs to be solved by the players who are students at the school, this campaign is going to be exceptionally fun for you. If you're not into that, then it's obviously a bad choice. The other thing that I will say about Strixhaven is that it is very much a roleplay heavy campaign. You're going to get the most out of this campaign if you have a group who loves to really dive into the personalities of their characters. This book introduces systems for how to study for exams, how to build relationships with other students. You can even acquire the beloved option, where that actually grants you an inspiration-like benefit for having a beloved. So there is an entire system in here for creating friends, best friends, enemies and rivals, as well as beloved companions. And there's actually a whole list of great NPCs to bring to life as other students from the various schools. So while your party gets together to solve the mystery, they're also playing games, going to the bar, joining in the glee club, or hanging out in the gardens and just sitting with their other students, having conversations, cramming for exams, heading up the library and trying to find the right book because the library is huge. And there's a lot of exploration of downtime and role play. So if your group's not into that, if they're just ready to swing swords and axes at big monsters, this campaign might not be the right place for them.
Building on what you say, Kelly, about the actual adventure structure, the structure follows a 4-year university program. So the campaign happens from level 1 to 10, but it actually happens over the span of a 4-year period. So this is some serious downtime interspersed between little bits of adventure. There is not a lot of combat. There's still some.
This is actually a theme that we're seeing a little bit in D&D 5e with Candlekeep Mysteries and Wild Beyond the Witchlight, which is a great option for some play groups. And I do like that we have this diversity where not everybody wants dark settings and grim stakes with big epic monsters that threaten the existence of reality and the world, where people are dying left, right, and center and epic wars are taking place. Some of us love that. But other groups might just want to drink coffee, explore crazy libraries, meet new friends, and deal with unraveling mystery that is at their fingertips. And that can be a lot of fun for some groups.
That said, the not Voldemort villain of this story is trying to drain the life of everyone in the school. So it does have high stakes eventually to it. And I do have to say, the not Voldemort villain being a bullywug blood mage is super fun. I do love that. It is delightfully mischievous, macabre, but also whimsical at the same time.
Now, if I take a Bullywug Blood Mage and make him stand upright and kind of just make him 2% more human-like, he basically looks like Bullywug.
Yeah. I think that's the hilarious thing about it, is that like the frog nose and everything like that. Like, I guess you could say that this setting is completely on the nose with many of its references. And I do think that is something that is worth noting, is that this book does have a lot of pop culture references in it. It does have a lot of references to very modern and anachronistic ways that universities are organized with things like glee clubs and theater clubs and coffee shops and bars and masquerade balls and all these sorts of things. So Strixhaven is a very like modern, anachronistic, high magic setting where magic is kind of technology. So I do have to say that, like, if you love all that and you love it all being whimsical and roleplay heavy, you're going to absolutely love this. But if you're looking for like your dark, gritty fantasy, you're going to have to look elsewhere here, because this is not that at all. So those of you that do enjoy your dark, gritty settings might be hoping, okay, maybe there's some cool monsters in this book that I can mine, or some encounters that I can, or maps that I can use. And certainly I do think that there is a lot of things that you can repurpose here. The book features the stat blocks for the 5 big dragon founders of the university, which are all over challenge rating 20, crazy boss monsters, and then tons of humanoid NPC stat blocks for the various students, apprentices, and professors that are at the university itself, associated with each of the schools.
The one thing to note, though, is that a lot of these stat blocks are repetitive of themselves or things that we've seen before. The 5 dragons are very reminiscent of what we just saw in Fizzbands, with one extra ability that makes them unique. When it comes to the students, each different school of the 5 schools that you can attend in Strixhaven have their own stat blocks for students, apprentices, working their way up to the headmasters and so forth. But again, there's very little difference between the 5 schools other than 1 or 2 abilities. So if you are hoping that the 20-some-odd stat blocks in here are going to give you a large amount of new options at your table, you might actually be disappointed. Again, even the monsters here really do advertise use in a Strixhaven campaign only, and I think there are maybe 2 or 3 standout monsters that were pretty cool that I could see grabbing and using in my home campaign, but that's about it.
Yeah, the interesting thing here is that this actually kind of makes the case against Wizards of the Coast's new model of presenting spellcasting stat blocks. Previously, you could have done all the kind of the professor stat blocks there's 10 of these stat blocks in this book. And all of them are about challenge rating 7. They all have about 100 hit points. They all have really similar saving throws and skill proficiencies. And all of them basically have a small spell list of innate spellcasting, 1 at-will ability, and 1 like recharge power. And had they just presented 1 stat block with 10 different variant spell lists, they could have saved like 5 pages in this book.
I wish that this book had less time spent on repetitive monsters and more time on new spells and magic items, because I'm thrilled with a lot of what this book offers, but I will say that when I picked it up and thought I was looking at a source book, the moment I opened it and went, oh, this is a magic school campaign, my expectations were completely diverged. I found a lot of things to be excited about once I set my expectations to the right thing. But what I thought I was going to get in this book was going to be a ton of new player options, what Strixhaven looks and feels like, and tools to build a campaign within Strixhaven with a lot more spells and a lot more unique monsters.
Yeah, many of the special abilities that were given to the monsters in this book, particularly the NPC spellcasters, probably could have been new spells. And so this is where I kind of fall into this middle ground of like, what are we getting out of this book? I understand that the new stat block format is really easy to use in play, but I also want bang for my buck as far as what I'm getting. And as an experienced dungeon master, I can see a monster stat block with spellcasting and know, okay, I can make this monster into 20 different things by just changing the spells that it has, and I'm comfortable enough with my understanding of the rules that You know, I don't need to look up what a fireball does anymore. So it's a bit of a catch-22 between how it presents information for newer Dungeon Masters and experienced ones. And I do think that Strixhaven kind of overdid it on the repetition here.
So all in all, who is this book for? We've said it several times, but if you were hoping for a source book that was going to expand your games of D&D in major ways, this might not be the right buy for you. But if you are a DM who has a group of players who's excited about Magic School, and that is something that is thrilling to you, this is actually a really superb book with a lot of inspiring locations, beautiful adventures, and for a roleplay heavy group, there's a lot of fun to be had here. But I think it is very specific to those people who are going to be spending their downtime roleplaying. A DM who's prepared to build relationships, bring to life a number of NPCs, and unravel the mysteries of Strixhaven University.
It's very easy to brush Strixhaven off as a ripoff of Harry Potter or a derivative work. But I think there's a lot of creativity in the specificity and in the details of this book. And I do think that having it all together in one place, adapted for Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition and presented in this really, really high quality way, is great for those who love the genre as a whole and love the tropes involved. If you know you're going to love this book because you love the genre and you love the premise, you're going to love this book and you're going to have a great campaign. If it's not really your cup of tea, skip it. You're not really missing anything.
So this has been a look at Strixhaven, A Curriculum of Chaos, the new book introduced for Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. If you've had a chance to look over this book, tell us your thoughts on it in the comments below.
The videos that we create on our channel are made possible thanks to the incredible generosity of our Patreon supporters. If you enjoy the work that we do here on YouTube, please consider supporting our show by following the links in the description below.
And don't forget to check out our live play Shadows of Drakkenheim, which airs Tuesday nights at 6 p.m. Eastern on Twitch. You can find all the previous episodes right up over here.
And we've got many other reviews of the D&D sourcebooks that you can check out right up over here.
Please subscribe to our channel so that you never miss an episode.
Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time
in the dungeon.